Hey guys, this is Chad Dietz here. I am here to report on the Williams book, chapters 19 to 22. In these chapters, Williams really begins to look at the community as far as it's set. He entitles that section Justice in the Community and deals with our government and society and how things are structured and what things look like in that community. He begins the section off by looking at our community structures and what they're really centered around. He brings some question as to what the true community center is. He asserts that the way things are structured now is that community centers tend to be around commerce rather than different things that they could be. He asked, what are the centers of the community? Is it the church? Is it schools? Or is it rather strip malls and other things of commerce? And presents this idea that we tend to build our cities not necessarily around the things they should be, but also around but rather around things that are capitalistic in effort. He also kind of brings to light some ideas that maybe some of the buildings that we use, that they could be used for multiple purposes rather than the singular purposes we tend to give them. And that includes his idea of church and schools like that, and how we can begin to make a communal effort and center community around actual community rather than commerce. He moves in to chapter 20, and he kind of takes a big gear shift and moves into talking about the elderly, an elderly community. He really says that we as people, especially those who have parents that are elderly, tend to focus more on money and time rather than the care that the elderly really need, and really focuses on the dignity that we're robbing those that are growing old. That we, in our minds, we tend to have two decisions, right? We either allow someone who's old to live by themselves, which is a dangerous prospect, as many can't fully take care of themselves, or to be institutionalized. We tend to compartmentalize the elderly and put them away, is what Williams is saying here, and that in the process of kind of compartmentalizing, we are pushing them and not allowing them to grow with dignity, and basically telling them that they're no longer useful because they're no longer contributing members to our financial capitalistic endeavors. Williams actually, here's a quote: "We are more and more conscious of the danger of assuming that there are only two alternatives for the elderly: living alone and therefore at risk, or living institutionally." So he really kind of brings this question of how we begin to look at the elderly and care for the elderly in chapter 20. Chapter 21, he moves and shifts into another outlying area or a separated community, and that is the justice system. And it really looks into jails and the custody system, as he puts it. And he suggests that the justice system, the way that it's currently set up, is not based on rehabilitation. That rather the idea of what we're doing by incarcerating people is presenting a revenge for those that have been wronged, for the families, or for those personally that have been wronged, a type of revenge system that's like, ha ha ha, we got you, rather than truly trying to rehabilitate. And the fact that we are not offering any kind of mental health help to those that are in need, and he suggests that those are probably a majority of the issues that could be faced if we really did it well, but rather our justice system, our custody system, the jail system really is based on a capitalistic effort And so it's a moneymaker. And so he argues that there's a big issue with how things are set up, and contends that it's chronic. He talks about how 2/3 of women in custody have had children before they were 16, and that there's a cycle and some things that probably could be done to help prevent crimes and prevent things that we're just not doing. We'd rather be out of sight, out of mind, and push those that are on the edges of society further away so that we don't have to worry about them, rather than truly thinking of the issue of rehabilitation. In chapter 22, Williams kind of gives this idea, this grand scheme of what community really should look like, and he wants the community to find balance, and not just be totally capitalistic mindset, but also have this balance of empathy as well, and this equilibrium about how we care for others and the things that we do. He says, now the point about empathy is that it implies a particular kind of emotional awareness. It lets us know that what we feel is not just a private affair. He suggests that we should be empathetic towards others, and that we could begin to create the kind of community that Christ intended as we begin to truly kind of understand where other people are at, rather than sectioning off things or just following the almighty dollar. All in all, Williams makes some really great points in these chapters, and not really so much a step-by-step, but just a broad overview of some things that probably should change. He doesn't give a whole lot of suggestions on how it should change, other than beginning to look, like I said in chapter 22, towards ourselves and our mindset, and how we begin to approach an empathetic idea of mind. They do kind of lean towards a communist view of society, or a socialist view of society, where everyone supports everyone else. I'm not saying that that's good or bad, but he really seems to focus on the idea that our money and finances shouldn't be filtering through the government, but that they should go directly to people in need, and that there are other agencies, such as the church, that could handle the kind of money and use it probably better and more efficiently to help those that are around us. Biblically, he really has that Acts 2, 44 through 47 view of church, where it talks about all the believers coming together. This is what Acts 2, 44 through 47 says. All who believed were together and had all things in common. They would sell their possessions and goods and distribute the proceeds to all that had need. Day by day, as they spent much time together in the temple, they broke bread at home, ate their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having the goodwill to all people. And day by day, the Lord added to the numbers of those who were being saved. That's really what Williams is talking about, especially in chapter 2, this idea of community and empathy working together for a common cause. I really like what he has to say about the elderly, and that kind of ties in biblically with the idea of honoring your father and mother, in this idea of presenting a more communal look at how that happens while presenting those that are aging still purpose in what they do, if we approached it more from a community rather than segregating them to some home or some community where they're somewhat out of sight, out of mind. As well as Williams' topics of rehabilitation are really good. I agree with a lot of the things that he says, and that we're doing a pretty poor job at dealing with the roots of issues, rather than just presenting repercussions or presenting some sort of punishment for things that have gone on. The roots of the issues are probably dealing with mental health and some other things And I think there can be a broader um, uh, improvement in these areas. Um, really the whole group of 4 chapters there seems to circle around the idea of loving your neighbors, and how we can create a community that truly is fueled out of love, rather than greed, and what that looks like. And so, all in all, good stuff. And that's my video on chapters 19 through 22 of Williams.